The British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
Good morning. My name is Gina Tang, and these are your morning headlines to 11 o'clock. Family of those taken hostage from southern Israel last October 7th are gathering in Toronto today, marking 1 year since the attack. Maureen Lashim says her family has been told her cousin from Gonan is still alive and being held captive by Hamas. This takes place after she was abducted at the Supernova Musical Festival.
And every single second in these tunnels is a second too much. And I encourage our so-called Canadian leaders to actually lead.
Another one of those who were affected from the Israel-Hamas war, Arnaud Ladidoy, says a year later, time has not helped to heal the pain he's carried since the October 7th attack on Israel. Ladidoy says his niece was one of the more than 1,200 Israelis killed that day.
Can't believe it. Sometimes I'm waking up in the morning and I'm telling myself what a horrible dream I have had. And then I understand that that's a reality. The field was our sunshine. We miss her every minute and every day.
With the provincial election still a couple of weeks away, Doctors of BC, the association that represents BC doctors, is making sure that our province's political leaders don't lose sight of what's on the minds of doctors and their patients. Dr. Amma Karamodine, president of Doctors of BC, says, quote, "Given the challenges in the healthcare system, a commitment for real and tangible change from patients is imperative. Quote, importantly, we need assurances that they will continue to work closely with doctors as leaders help develop their true solutions." British Columbia's conservative leader says comparing the Nuremberg trials to public health measures related to the COVID-19 pandemic is unacceptable and, quote, deeply disrespectful to the memory of those who suffered in the Holocaust. This was said after video surfaced of John Rustad, BC Conservative Party MLA, saying his party would, quote, certainly be participating with other jurisdictions, before being asked at an online meeting about where he stood on, quote, Nuremberg 2.0. This is the idea that people behind public health measures during the pandemic should be put on trial. In response to Rustad, New Democratic David Eby says it is difficult to fathom Rustad is comparing BC health officials who saved thousands of lives with Nazi war criminals.
To be entertaining suggestions that we would put public health officials, doctors, and nurses who ran vaccine programs, who responded in the depths of the pandemic on trial similar to Nazi war criminals, is shameful. It's bizarre.
As BC struggles with wildfires every summer, smoke inhalations injuries are becoming more common. Among firefighters, our reporter Ryan Bowles has more on the current situation and new developments. The 2024 wildfire season in BC ranks among the worst the province has faced. According to the BC Wildfire Service, over 2,000 fires have been burned since April 1st. As a result of these fires, smoke inhalation injuries have become more common in BC, with most respiratory protections being non-mandatory. August Doigood, a former student at Emily Carr University, designed a respirator to aid in preventing these injuries. The product, called Respire, was Dugoid's final project at Emily Carr University, and a small, sleek-looking respirator that looks similar to scuba diving gear. Symptoms common to smoke inhalation can include coughing and shortness of breath. Long-term exposure can lead to respiratory illness like COVID, and in severe cases can cause heart attacks and strokes. On to weather. In Burnaby, partly cloudy this morning, continuing during the afternoon with highs of 20 Celsius. These have been your morning headlines to 11 o'clock. Gina Tang, BCIT's The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow. This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
What do you collect?
I collect shoes.
K-pop albums,
Rocks and crystals.
Pokemon cards, money, sports trading cards,
photo cards.
I collect jewelry from different countries I visited and from thrift stores.
Welcome back to Agree to Disagree.
This is the Cheeky Collector's Guide. So, Lauren, do you collect anything?
I don't collect anything at the moment, but I used to collect those little Disney plushies. I think they were called Tsum Tsums. I used to have so many of them. Unfortunately, my parents gave them away. I think I grew out of them, according to them. But how about you, Tammy?
Well, I have always been a Sanrio girly. I had a very modest collection of mostly Hello Kitty items when I was a kid. Obviously your parents aren't buying you toys every day.
Yeah.
But now that I'm older, I have access to adult money, I've added a couple things to that collection.
Yeah, absolutely. And collecting is such a big thing right now, and it has been for quite some time. You can collect Funko Pops, vintage art, vinyls, there's a whole range of things to collect. It's an endless world of collecting.
Yeah, and there's some real value that can be generated from these collections, especially if you manage to get your hands on something that was maybe owned by a celebrity or something that was limited edition or even first edition. There's some real big money in these collections.
Totally.
Aw, new Charizard card. Cool.
New Gym Challenge game cards.
Can G.I. Joe stop the Crimson Guard? Find out in Marvel Comics.
And that was from the Pokemon Gym Challenge card set commercial from 1999 and the G.I. Joe 1985 Marvel Comics commercial.
There are different collectors out there. People who make art, people who sell them, people who just admire them for themselves. I mean, what is it? Profit or passion or both?
You know what? I met a guy the other day who just paints on Pokemon cards.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, you can find him on Instagram. He goes by Sukoko Studio. He takes Pokemon cards, and you know how they just have a little rectangle of art where you can see the Pokemon?
Yeah.
He takes that and he basically expands the painting to fill the entire card. This is how he puts it.
Oh, I like that one. That one's sweet.
That's adorable.
Yeah, these later ones definitely goes back to my childhood where I would also stare at my Pokemon cards and just imagine what that world looked like. And I paint on everything. I try to paint on all over my sketchbooks. And I just thought, what if I, just expanded the world?
Well, I'm sure that there are many out there that would probably not even think to paint over a Pokemon card.
Yeah, Sue's not painting on a first edition Charizard or anything. Most of the cards he paints on are not worth more than a couple of dimes probably. But it doesn't even matter to him anyway because the value of Pokemon cards to him isn't the monetary value but the Pokemon card itself. In fact, to him, a roughed up Pokemon card is more valuable than a mint condition one because a roughed up one has all the stories and the memories attached to it.
Those ones tell more of a story, especially even if they are a little bit damaged, because for me, I want to be able to feel how do I transform it? Do I make it seem as if, the card itself was attacked by a Pokemon? How do I, incorporate that? I want to do more of that.
He also told me about the role of Pokemon in his childhood and why it means so much to him even today.
We were immigrants, so we didn't have a lot of money, so my parents got me 2 packs of Pokemon cards for my birthday. And I remember being a little kid and being they're my pets, so I'd lay them all out and then feed them goldfish crackers. And it's when I talk to people about the Pokemon cards, everybody has stories like that. They all have little things they would, especially because in your childhood, people, they would take their cards with them wherever in the rain and in puddles, and now they're able to kind of relive that.
And I'm sure that there are many people like Sue out there, but maybe not with Pokemon cards. Well, what about comic books? I met this artist a little while back who creates collages out of vintage comic books. He's a collector and an artist.
Oh, really?
Just like Sue. One thing I'm also sure of, though, is that there are a handful of people who would never even consider making art out of their collections. It's a completely different mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
Just like Paul. I met a guy named Paul who works at a collector store and is an avid comic book collector. He told me that he would never even consider touching his comic books other than admiring them and reading them. To make art? Well, he said that's a completely different ballpark.
That's not something I would do, not something I would recommend. To me, that's kind of like debasing the comic. Like, I'm a collector that likes to have his collection complete, like 100%, not with pieces missing and things out of it, right? If I see a comic like that, I wouldn't buy it because it's not for me.
Paul also mentioned that he values the profit he makes from selling his comic books.
Like, okay, this is what I used to do when I was younger. I would buy certain books and I would sell certain books, and then nowadays I look back and what I did back then, and I realized that those were mistakes, because some of the books I've sold for like a couple thousand back then are now worth like 40,000-50,000. So I'm sitting there going, wow, I sold a book for 2,000 that now is worth over 50,000. I go, and I had a bunch of them. I could retire off of that stuff. I had like 20 copies like that I did, thinking, wow, I made a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. This is fantastic. Not real.
Paul and Sue are two very different collectors. I mean, one likes to make art and the other one likes to collect and make profit off of his comic books. For me personally, I wouldn't know what I want to do. I mean, I'm not an artist and I'm not a salesman either, so I'm not too sure how I would go about it. For me, when I was younger, whenever I had a collection of something, I wouldn't want anyone to touch it. I would present it really neatly in my room and just kind of admire it from a distance and then tell people to admire it from even a further distance.
For me personally, I can't justify spending money on something unless I can use it. So if I collect something, like I collect Sanrio things, if I get like a Hello Kitty keychain, I'll put it on my backpack because then I'll actively be using it and I'm actively enjoying it rather than just having it on a shelf somewhere.
And with the collection, at least for me, I wanted to complete it. And so that's what I asked Paul. I asked him what would he do if he collected all the comic books.
I don't think that's ever going to happen because, like you said, not just with the sheer amount of books out there, but just the sheer dollar volume. There's so much stuff out there I want that I can never afford, right? Because there's books out there that's worth millions of dollars, worth more than a house. I'm never going to be able to afford that, right? So
Sue and Paul are different types of collectors, and it's because they have different values. I think Sue as a person values the artistry and the nostalgia, whereas what do you think Paul values more?
I think he values having the pristine collection but also making money off of it. Like he said, he would choose to sell certain comic books and keep others. So I think definitely a part of it is making a profit off of them. I mean, he is a manager at a collection store.
I guess they just represent the different types of collectors there are out there, huh? Because for me, myself, I think I relate to Sue more. I'm definitely not planning to sell my collection, but it's more of a nostalgia and having this that means a lot to me rather than oh, I'm probably going to sell this and make more money later.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not an artistic person when it comes to painting or drawing, but if it's a collection that I'm really, really passionate about, I would never consider selling kind of those collectibles. If I came across something that was worth a lot and it didn't mean too much to me, I definitely consider seeing how much money it's worth and maybe giving it to somebody who actually wants it and values it for their own collection.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a bonus. if I were to pass away, I mean, I will eventually, but when I do, it'd be a nice bonus if like the stuff that I own actually has some value, and then that would benefit like your loved ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think they share one commonality though.
Yeah, what is that?
They both regret getting rid of the stuff they had as a kid.
Right.
But like maybe for different reasons. Like Stu wants to be able to paint on his old cards, and Paul, you know, he's thinking about how much his old stuff would be worth today.
Yeah.
But I think like we all relate to that. Like, you know, you have that story about your parents giving away your collection.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't just those Tsum Tsums I mentioned. There were so many other retro toys and cards that I had that I really wish I still had today, even if it was like in a box somewhere. Like, it's the nostalgia, it's the meaning behind it, it's a memory to my childhood and probably a lot of people's childhood. So I totally have that regret of my parents giving it away.
Yeah, and I think a lot of kids feel that way, like kids our age, and this is my theory. I think that's why Pokemon is coming back. I think that's why Hello Kitty is coming back, because we had these collections when we were kids and then we don't have them anymore. But now that we've come into, you know, we have access to money and our own free will and whatnot, we can get those things again.
Totally.
This was Tammy Mack
and Lauren Achille. So whatever you decide to do,
you can collect them all,
you can paint them all,
you can sell them all.
The choice is yours.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.